Well, welcome to my shop tour. Since others are doing it and enjoy it, I thought I would post one. My shop's on the second floor in my house, above the garage. I say it wasn't very practical to put the garage up here, so the shop had to be upstairs. Has a couple of hassles, but I've come to work with it pretty well. I've just entered the door that connects to the main part of the house and sweeping around the shop here. Just inside the door in the first corner, I still do some electronics tinkering, so there's my trusty Tektronix oscilloscope and some logic and a PC that's used for programming microprocessors. Moving along, there are windows here, and I happen to have a lucky window view. It's night right now, so you can't see it. Out there is a body of water called Pleasant Cove, which is a tidal inlet. Nice spot. Next is a drawing file cabinet. This drawing file contains all of the plans and drawings of Ray Hasbrouck. Many years ago, Ray asked me if, in the event of his death, I would take over selling his plans, and I agreed to do that. So this is Ray Hasbrouck's plans for steam engines without casting. A bench with the usual collection of junk along the way, but in this end of the bench is my shear line setup. I have a pretty complete set of shear line. I many years ago was a dealer for shear line, and any profit I might have made got turned into equipping my own shear line shop. I always say when I get so old I have to move into the retirement home, I can take this little corner with me and still have a shop. Next along, I have a small area for displaying work. There's some old model boats up there. There's some Stuart engines on the top of it. Some other models that I've finished. Another Stuart number 9. Just a variety of models. That's a Mona by LBSC. A few other models down here in crates ready to be hauled off to trade shows or whatever I do. Next is an Alexander tool and cutter grinder. I just recently got this, and as my friend Larry says, I'm still making friends with it, but it's quite a nice little machine. I'm pretty happy with it, but I'll get better with making cutters. Behind it is a Busker organ, a hand-cranked pipe organ, which was a fun little project. Here's a Max NC machine. This is in my shop. Somebody sent it out here for me to rebuild, and so it's in here for rebuilding into being a mock system. Around here is my small milling machine, my KX1 mill. This is a CNC mill. Next is the principal workbench. This is where I would spend most of my time doing the fitting and finishing and whatever, any small work. Around the corner from that, I designed and built this house myself, so I included a sink in the shop, which is a very handy thing to have, cleaning your hands and pickling and whatever else. Next around the corner is my manual milling machine. I kind of call this a closing port. If you look at the top, that's a Bridgeport M-head, but if you look at the name label down here, it says that it's a closing. It's a closing model 8513, which was actually special built by Closing for a specific customer. So it's not a cobble job. I always just assumed some previous owner had modified it and stuck that head on there. But that was a factory original done by the Closing company. Next is my principal CNC machine. This is a Jet knee mill. I did the conversion. It has ball screws. Notice there are no hand cranks. This is a CNC machine. Very successful. I'm very pleased with it. I chose to elevate the table instead of operating the quill, and that's been very successful for me. So that's my 2 milling machines. Next along the way is my grinding and sharpening department. I have a little Meteor drill grinder, sharpened down to a number 80. Have to admit it doesn't get a lot of use, but again, a machine I found at a lucky deal, and it's been a pretty good machine. Grinder, a Glendo diamond grinder, an SRD drill grinder, which is a really clever gadget. It gets the relief on the drill by sharpening on the inside of a cup wheel, and I find that to be a very useful machine, good sharpener. Around behind me is a Delta Universal Tool and Cutter Grinder. Remember I said I'm on the second floor. If you notice that all of my heavy tools are clustered right here in this one area. And I don't know if you can see it there, but there's a seam in the floor. This happens to be the load-bearing wall directly below it. So I'm a little limited in what I can put on the second floor, but I've worked it out pretty well. Next along behind that is my Delta Rockwell 11 by 36 inch. Again, a great machine I got used for a really good deal. It was a basket case, but the dealer promised me it was all there, and I completely rebuilt it. I got all of my Aloris holders and other tools above that. And then around behind it, a workbench containing all the chucks and collets and lathe tools and a diamond or a green wheel grinder for sharpening carbide. Moving ahead of this into the stock room or scrap room, I think. A lot of scrap, very narrow shelves. This has worked out really well. Those are only about 4 inches wide, but it's a neat way to display a lot of small rods and whatever. I have my standard 4x6 bandsaw. Notice it's on a low wooden bench. This was an idea that Rudy Cahupt published, and I really like it. I find I sit on that end of the saw and use it as a vertical saw, probably more than I use it as a cutoff saw. Moving around, I have an outside door here. There's an outside entrance, and you'll notice some heavy bolts up there. There's a gin pole arrangement on the outside and a chain fall down here for hoisting things in and out. Swinging around is basically the woodworking end of the shop. I don't do a great deal of woodworking anymore, but I always enjoyed it, and I certainly wouldn't give up my woodworking machinery. I do have my 8x14 CNC lathe here. This is still a work in progress. It runs, and I've made a few parts with it, but it's not quite completely yet. There's my wax pot and vacuum chamber for doing investment casting and rubber molds, which I do a little bit of. I have a long, narrow bench in this shop because as a boat builder, I like to build masts and oars and paddles and things like that, so a long, narrow bench was useful. On the bench, a couple of unfinished projects. There's the wheels for a wooden clock work that was cut on my router, and then a model steam launch. When I sold my real steam launch, I started building this 4-foot model, which is even uses some of the deck wood that was left over from my real boat. Swinging into the corner is my CNC router. This is a completely self-built machine, all built from salvaged parts acquired out of the MIT flea market. It is the size it is because that was the available parts for it. It's just received a pretty complete overhaul. I had originally built it with some pretty wimpy servo motors, and I've just replaced it with steppers and getting much better performance out of it. And swing around so you can see the rest of the shop. A bunch of old kitchen cabinets that I found. I even noticed some old metal kitchen cabinets. Those have to be from the 1960s, but they work pretty well. So this is the back corner view of my shop. I'm lucky to have a pretty good sized shop, but it's an important thing to me. I do try to spend a good deal of time up here. So that's my shop from Pleasant Cove, Maine. Hope you enjoyed the shop tour.